Right when you think that everything's looking up in Chicago, there's optimism, there's hope. Forget about all the old stuff. This is the year. Ben Johnson's your coach, Caleb Williams your quarterback. Everything's good to go. Wickershammed.
Uh-oh.
Seth Wickersham of ESPN drops a bomb yesterday, and there's a lot to it. So there's a book that's coming out in September titled American Kings, A Biography of the Quarterback, and it chronicles the journey of a bunch of players at both college and the NFL from the past as well. So quarterbacks from all different, landscapes. And Caleb Williams is featured prominently in some of the excerpts that have made the rounds. Quotes from the book are his dad, Carl Williams, who went to great lengths to try and circumvent the NFL draft. He wanted to give his son an opportunity to choose his future employer because he was worried about the Bears' history of not really working well with quarterbacks. Quote, I don't want my son playing for the Bears. The Bears are where quarterbacks go to die. Carl Williams, his dad, spoke with Archie Manning, who helped, obviously, Eli Manning get to New York and out of control of the San Diego Chargers. There was even a conversation about potentially going to the UFL so that he could become an unrestricted free agent in 2025 to be able to pick a team. He wasn't happy with the rookie wage scale. And then the most interesting stuff of all this is that he thought, well, maybe I'll just blast the organization like John Elway did in '83 to the Baltimore Colts and just go public with it like the Elways did back then. And then Caleb Williams was at the Combine and all of a sudden realized, hey, man, I get along great with Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings head coach. That's where I want to be. His dad was on board. They hit it off. But Ryan Poles, the GM for the Bears, told him, we're drafting you either way. So Caleb was concerned that if he did try to bury the organization, that he didn't want to nuke the city, so he wasn't ready for all that. And so at a pre-draft visit in the Bears facility, Williams believed he could be a part of the process to turn the franchise around. I can do it for this team. I'm going to go to the Bears. And then he went on to discuss the in-season struggles with Eberflus and Shane Waldron, the OC, and not really having any direction when it came to prepping and looking at film and all that stuff. So moral of the story is interesting timing considering Seth Wickersham writes for ESPN. And Seth Wickersham points out that Caleb Williams wanted to be a part of the Vikings organization, who the Bears just happen to be playing on ESPN on Monday Night Football, week 1 of the upcoming season. So take it away. There's the unpiling of the drama in Chicago now between Caleb Williams and the organization.
So, again, I think we kind of forget pretty soon after what happens and the speculation and conversation is around the draft every single year. Right? Like the next one comes along, we're like, oh, yeah, okay, we're focused on this one now. If you go back, though, there was a lot of smoke in regards to the frustration of Caleb Williams and his party on his side of things with the entire draft process. That was the speculation. Now we have confirmation that all that was true. And I got to be honest, like I'm not sure that I'm overly bothered by it for this reason. I never hate the fact when players or even their families try to push the envelope of what's possible to give themselves the best opportunity possible. All right. I know people made comments about, Prime and Shedeur Sanders and what they were maybe trying to do this year in the draft, which I think they're two, different in regards to the talent of both players. But in Caleb Williams' aspect, like he kind of sought out everything you possibly could, seek out at that point. He looked at going to the UFL, which would have been pretty crazy to think about. However, we've seen quarterbacks in the past do that. Granted, it would be decades ago. They talked about the rookie wage scale. There's a lot of people who've got issues with it. We've talked about this before. Fundamentally, a team can basically draft a player and have complete control of them for 7 years of their career. 7 years without the player's input outside of having to sign a franchise tag. A 4-year deal plus a 5th-year option and 2 tags. That's 7 years. You could be damn near 30 and never having the chance to really test free agent waters. So there's a lot of issues, I think, from the player's side as to, what could be potentially wrong when you enter into the NFL. Now, the hard part is he's now been here a year. The fan base, I think, and Jonas, you could speak to this better than anyone else. I think they like Caleb Williams. I think they want him to be their quarterback. They feel like he can be their franchise quarterback, despite all the chaos that went on last year in Chicago. But this isn't a ringing endorsement. I mean, even though at the end of the day, he came around on the Chicago Bears, there's still probably a lot of speculation that when it comes time for him to try to sign an extension, if things go well, you do wonder, will he be a guy that, stays around, tries to get out, tries to look for the first opportunity to go to another team? It feels like him, his father probably involved too, would try to make that sort of move. That's how, and by the way, that's how he operated in college, folks. Like, you shouldn't be surprised by it if you're a Bears fan. He left Oklahoma, where he had a nice setup, to go to Southern Cal. You could say he's fallen Lincoln Riley, but it was also to go to Southern Cal to go to greener pastures for him. He won a Heisman out of it, so you got to give him credit. But at the end of the day, that's what it's going to be about for him. It's trying to find where he feels like it's the best possible situation for him to succeed. Not the team, for him to succeed.
And by the way, Bears fans can outwardly be upset or frustrated about these comments and be hurt. Guess what? He's right. And based on how last year went, they were probably right in having some concerns about what the direction of the organization was going to be. So be upset about it all you want, but the proof is there. There's been a history of not being able to build around the quarterback and not finding the right guy. And last year only proved them more right. So they can get pissy about it all they want. Facts are facts.
Q, if you and your family, with 2020 hindsight as a benefit, had the opportunity to say, we're not going to the Browns, would you have rather had the opportunity to go to a franchise that knows how to utilize what you do best so that you could go figure, right? I know this takes a brainiac and a genius to come up with this conclusion, but someone who is going to actually put you in the best position to have success, and you have that play out versus being called a bust.
So,
which one would you rather have?
So here's the hard part about answering this question is, I think in general, had it been any other team other than Cleveland, I would have said, yeah, of course. Like, I want to go to the best possible situation. I grew up a Browns fan. It was literally a dream.
Hindsight. Now that the reality of being a pro versus being a fan.
That's the only exception. Cleveland was the only exception, even to this day.
Well, that's fair.
Even to this day.
Take Cleveland out of it.
Right. If you would have put any other organization that drafted me that didn't have that, like, Bernie Kosar jersey picture that I grew up as a kid, going to games as a kid, rooting for the Browns, like being so frustrated and upset when they got taken away and they go to Baltimore.
You thought you could be the person that writes the shit for them.
Without a doubt. I would never have and look, so that's the difference though, because it was a childhood dream come true. But if you're talking about any other team that you would have said, for example, now again, Chicago might have been different to me because I got close to that, just seeing that team being in South Bend, and you kind of had a respect for all the Chicago fans, the South Bend fans, and all that. So I don't know that and here's what I'll say on this, I didn't have that perspective. And right, wrong, or indifferent, my family really didn't either. Like, we were pretty naive to all of it. I was very fortunate. I had a couple of uncles who very savvy in the business world, and they helped me through a lot of the decisions on, finding an agent, interviewing agents who would be best set for me, and investment advice, like all those things. And they might have had the ability to see into the future and say, well, maybe this isn't the best place to go because of the organization. But there was never any pushing or pulling by my mom or my dad because they were just grateful. They always were. They were grateful to the University of Notre Dame. They were grateful to the Browns. They were always just grateful, and that was just how our background was. Like, it wasn't one of like, well, what can you do for me? What can you do for my son? You're not doing enough for my. It was never that. And that was how I was raised. So I didn't really look for that either, and maybe that was my own naivety. Maybe that was my own ignorance, or maybe even theirs. Which I don't know how, what your parents very
Like
rarely
you
ever
said,
experience this.
It's not a right or wrong answer, but at the end of the day, my answer would be I'd rather have people hate me for being a-hole in the initial based off of the potential of what I could be versus the latter where I went, I could have gone number one. I could have. I purposely priced myself out to the Cleveland Browns. Ironically, maybe coincidentally, the same franchise. I priced myself out.
So let me ask you this, because obviously the Browns were never a team you probably hated growing up in Pittsburgh.
I didn't hate them. No, I didn't hate them.
Well, okay, but you didn't like them. But if
like
you could have went, if it was the Pittsburgh
like Ohio.
Steelers, if it was the
Right.
Pittsburgh Steelers,
But see, the problem is the Pittsburgh Steelers have always been a pretty successful organization. That would be
Right.
the problem. If they hadn't played in a Super Bowl or had been close
here, let me
to,
put it this way. Let me put it
Okay.
this way. If you had the opportunity to go there, but the contract wasn't going to be perfect, you couldn't price yourself out. You know what I'm saying? Like you were going to have to maybe.
Okay, that's probably better. I wouldn't have. I most likely, if I had the opportunity, which kind of goes down the lane of, because I think we were probably raised probably pretty much very similar in ideologies and foundational components. We would have been over the moon excited to go to Pittsburgh, and whatever that would have been, it would have been whatever it is, and I would have went there, and I would have had a Hall of Fame career. I truly believe that. I would have been 100+ sacks guy. I would have had stability as a pro. I would have been in the locker room with guys like Joey Porter and James Ferrier and who's my guy from Michigan that was Larry Foote. I would have been with guys like
Was Kevin Green in there? Kevin Green is a part of
that. He's a little older, so he would have been
Up top,
he
Jonas.
would have been.
Hell yeah.
I mean, but Kevin Green was a very, very large influence on me. Kevin Green and Greg Lloyd is my favorite player of all time. LaVon Kirkland, Chad Brown. I used to work out with them at Bally's, and when I was in high school, I would have given up anything to be able to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, like I said, I get your point. But had my hometown team stunk and didn't, break my heart in the Super Bowl playing against Dallas or, seeing Bill Cowher get his Super Bowl. Bill Cowher, it was the highlight of my combine, was going in and interviewing with the Steelers. And I told him, I was like, man, 8 in there, like I know, and this, that, and the other, and there's no reason to move up for a linebacker if you're the Steelers. I would have went to the Steelers in a heartbeat. But with that being said, it was because it was based upon what I had grown up knowing. And I went to school on the same street that Art Rooney, the senior, the original, had a house on, and the Mexican War Streets. And then there was another area where Franco lived that was right near where I went to school as well. I was indoctrinated into the culture, not only indirectly, but directly. I saw these people. I met these people. Dwight White lived in the same community that I lived in, so I saw him quite a bit, and he became a mentor and a role model to me. But I think the point that I'm making is I would much rather be called an a-hole and unreasonable up front with having a Hall of Fame or a Pro Bowl, All-Pro career, Latin career of longevity and success versus being called a bust. I get called a bust. Think about it. I know you get called a bust. We both get called bust. And I made 3 Pro Bowls, and I am an All-Pro 3 times, and still get called a bust. And you know what? By all intents and purposes, by the letter of the law of what my potential was, if I had gone to a different organization and played for a different organization, my career was a bust.
No,
it was a
stop.
It was. Oh, it was.
Stop. I hate when you get, I hate this.
Bro, let's be clear here. Let's be clear. Like, put this in the proper. There is not. You can't name another football player. You can't name one that achieved what I achieved in terms of what I was able to do coming out of high school and college. You can't name them. I was the #1 player coming out of high school, Jonas. I won every award. The equivalent of the college Heisman is an award called the Bobby Dodd Award. I won the award. I won every award you can win in high school. I was the highest rated player coming out. Imagine that, the highest rated player coming out of high school. I was the parade player of the year coming out of high school. And then I go to college, and I'm able to parlay that into one of the more dominant deals in college and end up being the #1 rated player coming out in college. And won awards beyond, won every award you could win as a defender, was in the top 10 and votes for the Heisman. So in the end, all I'm saying is that for what it's worth, all that success, and it's a blessing and it's a curse because it can lead to you not having that opportunity to actually go to an organization in the draft where you can have success.
But I would say this in both your defenses. When you get to the NFL, you turn your careers over to the franchise you're with, the people you're around, and to fate. Brady got drafted to a terrible situation, and your Achilles jumped off the bone at 27.
Well,
you can't.
We never won.
Yeah,
we never won
okay,
in Washington.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people who never won. Like Eric Dickerson was a Hall of Famer, and he'll say it, man. I would rather be a Hall of Famer than win a Super Bowl. Sorry. I look at it, I go, once you get there, you hand your fate over to people around you, and you hand your body to the gods, and they determine what happens after that. In a large
it's
sport.
Not a complaint. It's not a complaint. It's just a
question though again, and I will reiterate this. I would do it over again and have this shot at trying to turn around and be a solution in Cleveland than not. That's how I look at that. And maybe that's how I, and have peace with it to some degree, because that was the opportunity I was given. It didn't work out. It was heartbreaking, still is to this day, but it's also why I think it's motivated me to find that next thing.
Indeed.
Whether that's in broadcasting or whatever else, like that still lives with you. And that's one of the things where I think
together.
Yeah, and that's
up
true.
Top, Brady.
This would have never happened. Up top.
Aww.
Yeah, up top, Brady. It brought us together.
So,
That's so
us being in the
sweet.
same freaking situation brought us together. So here we are. I want to be a Hall of Fame radio personality. I'm going to get it for something.
there you go.
I'll get you there.
Thank you, sir.